Most people think they know the answer to this. You picture yourself getting thirsty, rationing your water, maybe lasting a day or two. The real number is so much shorter than that, and the way you die is nothing like what you imagined. Here's what nobody talks about when they talk about Death Valley. The thing that kills you is not thirst. By the time you feel desperate for water, the damage is already done. What kills you is your core temperature. And Death Valley starts cooking it from the moment you step outside, faster than your body has any way to register. So this video is going to walk through exactly what happens to a human body out there. And by the end, you're going to understand why even experienced people with plenty of water have come terrifyingly close to not making it out. There's one thing in particular, something almost nobody realizes they're doing wrong, that I'm going to save for last, because it genuinely reframes everything else. Let's get into it. The first thing you need to understand is what the ground is doing to you, because most people only think about the air. Summer ground surface temperatures in Death Valley exceed 80 degrees Celsius, that's 176 Fahrenheit, well past the point where you'd call a steak well done. If you sit down, if you lie down, if you rest on that ground for any reason, you're not cooling off, you're cooking from below. Heat radiates up off the basin floor directly into your body, and the only way to stop it is elevated shade. Not just any shade. Shade that puts distance between you and that surface. Most people don't think about this. They find a rock, they sit against it, and they wonder why they're getting worse. And here's the thing about the air itself. Once the heat index climbs past about 99 degrees Fahrenheit, moving air stops being your friend. Below that, a breeze cools you down. Above it, the air is already hotter than your skin needs to be. So wind becomes a convection oven, pushing heat into you faster. This is exactly what happened to a group of German motorcyclists near Badwater Basin on July 6, 2024, when the temperature hit 128 degrees. They weren't overheating despite moving, they were overheating because of it. Every mile per hour was blasting 128 degree air into them through heavy safety gear they couldn't take off. Speed made it worse, one of them died. Now let's talk about your body's warning system, because this is where most people get into serious trouble. You'd think that in extreme heat, you'd feel yourself sweating hard, feel the fluid leaving your body, know when to stop. But Death Valley's humidity can drop to around 7%. In air that dry, sweat evaporates the instant it hits your skin. You never feel wet, you never feel like you're working that hard, so you radically underestimate how much fluid you're losing, and you keep going. Rangers say this is exactly why moderate days, 100 to 115, are sometimes harder to warn people about than the extreme ones. On an extreme day, people believe the danger. On a moderate day, they feel fine, right up until they're not. What's actually happening inside you is a race against a number. Around 40.5 degrees Celsius is the clinical threshold for heat stroke. Push on to 43, and it's fatal in essentially every case. Proteins denature, organs fail. Death by hypothermia isn't about the air around you, it's about the moment your body crosses that line. So the real question is never, how hot is it outside? It's how long you can stall your own internal temperature from climbing a few degrees. And in Death Valley in summer, without water, you're not stalling it for long. There's also a widely repeated idea about heat and humidity. The wet bulb 35 degree threshold. It says humans can't survive above a certain combination of the two. The problem is, that idea was built around humid environments. Death Valley is bone dry, and it kills people at wet bulb values far below that threshold. Laboratory research has found people's core temperatures start rising at wet bulb readings as low as the mid-20s Celsius, depending on the individual. The dry heat doesn't give your sweat time to cool you, it just takes the sweat and gives you nothing back. So you're out there, it's mid-morning, you've been moving, you feel okay, a little warm, maybe a little tired. And here's where I want to tell you about Steve Curry. He was 71 years old, and he was found sheltering in the sliver of shade beneath the Zabriskie Point sign, the most visited scenic overlook in the entire park. He'd taken 2 hours to walk half of a 6-mile loop. An LA Times reporter found him there and spoke to him. He declined offers of help. When asked why he'd gone hiking in that heat, he said, "Why not?" He died that afternoon. Not in the remote backcountry, not somewhere a helicopter couldn't reach, right at a tourist landmark, in plain sight, in front of other people. That is how fast this place moves on you. And here's the part I promised you at the start, the thing almost nobody realizes they're doing wrong. Once you see it, everything else in this video makes more sense. It's about water, not how much you carry, what you do with it. The instinct when you're in trouble is to ration, make it last, sip slowly. That instinct is not just unhelpful in acute heat, it is backwards. And here's why. Sweating is the only active cooling system your body has. Not the only one that helps, the only one you actually control. And sweating costs fluid. Every drop that evaporates off your skin is fluid pulled out of your bloodstream. So the moment you start rationing, you're not conserving water. You're throttling your own radiator. Think about what that means in practice. Water in your bottle has a cooling value of exactly 0. It does nothing. It is inert. The only water that lowers your temperature is water that's already inside you, circulating, available to be turned into sweat. So when you take that careful little sip and screw the cap back on, you are choosing to run hotter right now in exchange for a drink later. And in Death Valley, later might not exist. Your body doesn't wait for your rationing schedule. It heats up on its own timeline. And once you cross the line, no amount of water in reserve reverses it. This is why survival guidance from people who study heat physiology is so blunt about it. Drink to stay functional. Because dying of heat stroke with a half-full canteen next to you is not a hypothetical. It's a documented, repeated outcome. The bottle gets found with the body. The reframe is this: water isn't a supply you're stretching. It's fuel for a cooling system that's already running. Starve it, and the system fails while you're still holding the fuel. And while we're clearing up survival myths, let's talk about the cactus. Every parody of desert survival involves someone hacking open a cactus and drinking from it. In reality, that's a way to die faster. Most cacti store fluid laced with alkaloids and oxalic acid, bitter acidic compounds that cause vomiting and diarrhea. In a place with no water, vomiting is catastrophic. You lose more fluid and electrolytes than the cactus ever gave you. There is no rescue saguaro out there. The fishhook barrel is a rare partial exception, and even that can cause temporary paralysis. Leave the cacti alone. The other myth worth destroying is drinking urine. Counter to everything you've seen on survival television, your kidneys use urine as a disposal system for sodium and waste. Drinking it in extreme heat raises your sodium levels, makes you thirstier, and forces already stressed kidneys to work harder, which accelerates dehydration. The real point underneath both of these is the same. Once you're out of water in Death Valley in summer, there is no clever trick waiting to save you. Your window is measured in hours, not days, and nothing you find out there extends it. Which brings us to the rescue problem. When that motorcyclist died near Badwater Basin, emergency medical helicopters couldn't respond at all. They generally can't fly safely above 120 degrees. The temperature that day was 128. Instead, an injured rider was driven 19 miles to the Furnace Creek Visitor Center. He lost consciousness and then had to be taken 62 miles by road ambulance to a hospital in Pahrump because it was too hot for the air ambulance to come to him. The moment you most need a helicopter is the exact moment the helicopter cannot come. That's not a gap in the system, that's a physical limit of how rotors work in thin, superheated air, and no amount of calling for help changes it. So what does actually save people out there? A piece of paper. In the Lofgren-Henkel case, 2 flat tires stranded a pair of experienced campers in the backcountry. Someone left a note on the car dashboard. It read, 2 flat tires headed to Mormon Point, have 3 days worth of water. That note gave search teams a direction. One of the 2 survived. And the lesson experts drew from that case wasn't about how much water they carried. It was that a scrap of paper on a dashboard brought the search a starting point. Without it, they'd have been looking everywhere. So, how long could you actually survive out there with no water? The honest answer is that anyone who gives you a single number is guessing. The range is enormous, and it depends on things most people never factor in. Whether you're moving or still, in shade or sun, your age, how acclimatized you are, whether you started the day already down a litre. 2 people in the same spot on the same afternoon can be hours apart, but the shape of it is consistent, and the shape is what matters. It starts with your temperature creeping up, not dramatically, a degree, maybe 2. You feel warm and tired, which is exactly what you'd expect to feel, so you don't act on it. Then you cross that heat stroke threshold. And this is where it turns, because the first system to go is your judgment. Confusion, disorientation, poor decisions made with total confidence. People at this stage have walked away from their vehicle, they've declined help from strangers, they've kept hiking. That's the trap. Because every bad decision from that point accelerates everything. You're now overheating and moving and not seeking shade, and you're heating up faster than before. The window between feeling warm and being unable to make good decisions, that's the whole ball game. And in peak summer heat, unsheltered, with nothing to drink, that window is measured in hours, not days, hours. What nobody can tell you in advance is how many. On a moderate day, 105, 110, you probably have longer, and that's the cruelest part of this entire subject, because the moderate day is the one where you feel fine, keep walking, and run out of time without ever getting a moment that clearly said, turn around now. Which brings me to the last thing I want to leave you with, because I know what a lot of you are thinking right now. I wouldn't be that stupid, I'd bring enough water. So let me tell you about Richard Mulligan. He was an experienced hiker. He lived in Death Valley. He knew the park. He set out at 4 a.m, pre-dawn, exactly as you're supposed to, reportedly carrying around 9 liters of water. He researched his route, brought a topographic map, told friends where he was going. He did everything right. He ran out of water at 4:30 in the afternoon. He lost consciousness, slid down a scree slope, and woke up bruised at the bottom with no idea how long he'd been there. He was able to trigger an SOS on his satellite device, and even then, the first agency contacted had no helicopter available. The Navy crew that eventually came was delayed troubleshooting an alarm on the aircraft. He wasn't rescued until 11:15 that night. 9 liters, pre-dawn start, full preparation, local knowledge, and he still nearly didn't make it. He shared the story publicly afterwards. He said he'd hesitated out of embarrassment before deciding it mattered more that people understood. Even an experienced hiker can get into trouble out there. That's the real answer to the question in the title. It isn't a number. It's the fact that Death Valley is capable of overwhelming preparation itself, and that your body gives you no clear moment where you know it's time to turn around. It gives you a moment where you think you're fine, and then a moment where you're not, and very little in between. The valley named Death isn't being dramatic, it's just physics. And now you know how the physics works. If something in this genuinely surprised you, drop it in the comments. I read them, and the answers are always interesting. And if you want more of this kind of thing, real survival science, not the TV version. Subscribing means you won't miss the next one.